On Christmas, I overheard my son and my daughter-in-law conspiring against me, planning how to get their hands on everything I had built over 68 years of my life. I never imagined that those words, whispered behind the kitchen door, would give me the strength to teach them the most expensive lesson of their lives. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd tell. And if you, for just a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I only ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening my soul. My name is Carol Helen Thompson, and until that Christmas of 2023, I had been the perfect grandmother, the devoted mother, the woman who never said no when her family needed something. I lived in a sprawling historic home in downtown Savannah, Georgia, in the historic district, the one I inherited from my parents and had cared for like a treasure for 4 decades. Its old brick walls held the scent of cinnamon and morning coffee from thousands of mornings, and every corner told the story of a family that, I thought, loved me. That morning, December 24th, I woke up at 5, just like every day since I was widowed 10 years ago. The difference was that my hands were trembling with excitement as I prepared coffee in the kitchen with the charming, old-fashioned tiles I loved so much. I had planned the most special Christmas dinner of our lives. After months of saving every dollar from my Social Security check, I had bought everything needed for a worthy celebration: a turkey stuffed with cornbread dressing, a honey-baked ham, a classic Waldorf salad, spiked eggnog, and the gingerbread cookies I learned to make watching my grandmother as a little girl. But there was something more. That day, I planned to announce the best news. After years of paperwork and planning, I had finally been approved for a home equity loan to remodel the house. I wanted to convert the old carriage house rooms in the back into small apartments to rent out for extra income. My plan was that when I was gone, my children, Daniel and Patty, would have an inheritance that was truly worth something. Daniel arrived first, driving the black Ram truck he was so proud of. At 42, he worked for a construction company and was always complaining that he didn't make enough to maintain the lifestyle he and his wife, Monica, wanted. Monica got out of the truck with that smile I had learned to interpret, sweet on the outside, calculating on the inside. She was wearing a designer outfit that cost more than 3 months of my Social Security, carrying shopping bags from Saks Fifth Avenue that clearly didn't contain any gifts for me. "Oh, Carol, honey," Monica chirped as she came over to give me a kiss on the cheek, the only physical affection I ever received from her. "Your house is just so big. We can barely fit in our little condo anymore." Patty arrived half an hour later with her 2 kids, Sean, 15, and Valerie, 12. My daughter had been going through a rough patch since her husband left her for a woman 20 years younger. She worked as a secretary in a government office and always arrived exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights worrying about tuition and household bills. "Mom, it smells delicious," Patty said, carrying a store-bought Jell-O mold. "I'm sorry I couldn't help with the food, but you know how things are." I smiled and hugged her. Patty was my weak spot. Since she was little, she had been the child who was most like me, hardworking, self-sacrificing, always thinking of others before herself. Seeing her struggles broke my heart, which was why I had decided to include her in my renovation plan. During dinner, as I served the turkey and watched my family gathered around the mahogany table my late husband Robert had made with his own hands, I felt that sense of fullness that only comes from moments we believe are perfect. The kids were laughing and telling jokes, Patty seemed more relaxed than she had in months, and even Daniel was in a good mood. "Family," I said, raising my glass of eggnog, "I want to make a special toast. This year has seen a lot of changes, but also many blessings. To Grandma Carol." Sean shouted, and everyone raised their glasses. "Wait, I have something important to tell you," I continued, feeling butterflies in my stomach. "After a lot of work, I managed to get approved for a loan to remodel the house. We're going to turn the back rooms into rental apartments. That way, when you inherit this place, it'll be a real asset." The silence that followed was strange. Daniel and Monica exchanged a look I couldn't interpret at the time. Patty smiled, but there was something forced in her expression. "Oh, Mom," Daniel said, "are you sure it's a good idea to get into all that trouble at your age? Construction is really stressful. Besides, Carol," Monica added, "you should be enjoying your retirement, not worrying about contractors and construction workers." Their words hurt more than I expected, but I hid it with another smile. After all, I thought, maybe they were right. Maybe I was too old for such projects. After dinner, while I cleared the plates and they sat in the living room to watch TV, I decided to make them coffee and serve the gingerbread cookies they loved so much. I was in the kitchen, brewing the coffee, when I heard their voices coming from the dining room. They were speaking softly, but the acoustics of the old house carried their words clearly to where I stood. "Did you hear what she said about the renovation?" Monica whispered. "Yeah, she's completely lost her mind," Daniel answered. "Getting into that mess at her age. What worries me is that she's going to spend everything on that stupid idea, Patty continued. What if it goes wrong? What if she loses the house? That's why we have to act fast, Daniel said with a coldness that chilled my blood. I've already spoken to a lawyer. We can argue that she's no longer fit to manage her own finances. Are you talking about declaring her incompetent? Patty asked. It's for her own good, Monica interjected. Imagine if she gets into debt and loses everything. It's better if we manage her affairs. The cup in my hand slipped from my trembling fingers and shattered on the tile floor, making a noise that echoed through the house like a scream of pain. The sound of the broken cup silenced them immediately. I heard hurried footsteps coming toward the kitchen. Are you okay, Mom? Patty asked, peeking through the door. Yes, honey, it just slipped, I lied, bending down to pick up the pieces while trying to control the shaking in my hands. You know how clumsy I've been lately. Monica laughed from the dining room. See, Carol? That's why we say you shouldn't be carrying heavy things anymore. That night, after they left with their fake hugs and promises to visit soon, I was left alone in my house, which suddenly felt too big and too quiet. I sat in the rocking chair in my bedroom, the one where I had nursed my children 40 years ago, and for the first time in a long while, I let the memories flood in without resistance. When had it all started? At what point had I gone from being Carol, the woman who worked for 30 years as a nurse at the County General Hospital, to just Mom, the family's emotional and financial ATM? I remembered when Daniel was 25 and came to my house crying because he had lost his job. Robert had just passed away, and I was battling my own demons of widowhood, but without hesitating, I took $50,000 from my savings that he needed to start his own contracting business. I'll pay you back in 6 months, Mom, he had promised with tears in his eyes. That was 17 years ago. I never saw a single dollar back. Then came Patty with her divorce. Her ex-husband had left her with 2 small children and debts she couldn't pay. I took out a second mortgage on the house I loved so much to give her the $150,000 she needed to settle the credit cards and loans he had taken out in her name. It's temporary, Mom, she told me as she signed the papers at the bank. As soon as I'm on my feet, I'll help you with the payments. I was still making those mortgage payments alone, cutting back on my food, my medicine, on everything. And Monica? Monica had come into our lives like a princess expecting to be treated as such. When she married Daniel, I paid for half the wedding because it was important to do things right to make a good impression on her parents. $25,000 that I got by selling the jewelry Robert had given me on our early anniversaries. Then came the baptisms of their children, the first communions, the birthdays. There was always a reason for Grandma to chip in with whatever she could. But what hurt most wasn't the money. It was the loneliness. It was going to the hospital for a checkup and having no one to call. It was getting the flu and spending 3 days in bed without anyone noticing. It was my 68th birthday 2 months ago, when I waited until 11 at night for a call that never came. The next day, Daniel called to apologize. Oh, Mom, it completely slipped our minds. We were so busy with Monica's mother's birthday party. Monica's mother. A woman with a driver, a housekeeper, and a bank account that allowed her to depend on no one. While I was still washing my clothes by hand to save on the electric bill, I got up from the rocking chair and walked to the dresser where I kept my important documents. I pulled out the yellow folder where I had all the proof, the loans to Daniel, the wedding payments, the transfers to Patty, the medical bills from when I took my grandson Sean to a private hospital because the wait at the public one was too long and Patty was desperate. I did the math on a piece of paper, adding up every dollar I had given without expecting anything in return. The final number took my breath away, $340,000. Almost $500,000 that I had handed over through the years, believing I was investing in love, in gratitude, in a secure place in my family's heart. I couldn't sleep that night. I just stared at the wooden beams on the ceiling, the ones Robert had polished with his own hands when we bought the house in 1985. This house is going to be our legacy, Carol, he had told me as we painted the walls a sky blue. Our grandchildren will grow up here, and when we're old, we'll watch them play in the garden from the porch. Robert had died believing I would be protected, that our children would care for me as we had cared for them. He never imagined his wife would become her own children's personal bank, the woman who had to buy every visit, every call, every moment of attention with money she didn't have. At 6 a.m, my phone rang. It was Patty. Good morning, Mom. How are you feeling? Fine, honey, I lied again. Hey, Mom, I need to ask you a favor. I know we just spent Christmas together, but Sean needs supplies for a school project. It's about $150. Do you think you could help me out? You know how things are. It was always the same. You know how things are. As if her situation was my fault. As if I was obligated to solve it. Patty, I need to talk to you and Daniel. Can you come over this afternoon? Did something happen, Mom? You sound strange. Nothing happened, I just need to discuss something important with you both. Oh, Mom, I hope it's not another one of your crazy ideas like that remodeling thing. We already told you it's not a good idea. I hung up without answering. For the first time in my life, I hung up on one of my children. I got dressed in my best dress, the navy blue one I wore for special occasions, and did my hair carefully. If I was going to have this conversation, I was going to have it with dignity. They arrived at 4 in the afternoon. Daniel looking rushed, Monica checking her phone every 5 seconds, Patty with that look of perpetual exhaustion that broke my heart. Please, sit down, I said, gesturing to the living room sofas. What's this about, Mom? Daniel asked. We're in a hurry, we have an appointment to see a house that's for sale. You're buying a house? I asked, unable to hide my surprise. We're looking, Monica replied. With your ideas about remodeling, we thought it would be better to find our own place. The cynicism in her words hit me like a slap. There they were, planning to buy a house with money they didn't have, while I sacrificed to give them every dollar I could. I heard your conversation last night, I said without any preamble. An uncomfortable silence fell. Patty turned pale. What conversation, Mom? Daniel asked, but his voice sounded strained. The one about having me declared incompetent to manage my own finances. Monica sat up straighter. Oh, Carol, it wasn't with bad intentions. We're just worried about you. You're worried about me? I asked, feeling the anger begin to boil in my chest. You're worried about the woman who has given you $340,000 over the last 17 years? About the woman who mortgaged her home to get you out of debt? About the woman who skips meals to send you money when you need it? Daniel tried to interrupt, but I went on. Are you worried about the woman who spent her birthday alone because you were too busy? About the woman who goes to the doctor alone because no one has time to go with her? Patty started to cry. Mom, it's not like that, Patty? Then tell me, when was the last time you visited me without asking for money? When was the last time you asked me how I am, not how I can help you? The silence that followed was devastating. Because we all knew the answer. The following days were a silent torture. After that conversation, my children left without another word, just empty promises of, we'll talk later when things are calm, Mom, that never materialized. Patty called once to ask if I was over my tantrum yet, as if my pain was a childish whim that would heal with time. But what hurt the most was realizing that, deep down, a part of me was still hoping they would knock on my door, that they would arrive with flowers to apologize, that they would tell me it was all a misunderstanding. That for once in my life, they would be the ones to take the first step to heal our relationship. That hope crumbled on January 2nd. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was watering the garden plants, trying to keep my hands busy to stop my mind from racing, when I saw an unfamiliar sedan park in front of my house. A man in a suit carrying a briefcase got out, and my heart began to pound. The only people who show up like that are from the bank or lawyers. He knocked on the door with the formality of someone bearing bad news. Mrs. Carol Helen Thompson? Yes, that's me. My name is Mr. Hernandez. I'm an attorney representing your son, Daniel Thompson. I need to speak with you about an important legal matter. My legs felt weak. I invited him into the living room, the same one where I had confronted my children 3 days earlier. Ma'am, your son is concerned about your mental and financial state, he began, taking documents from his briefcase. He has requested that we evaluate the possibility of appointing a legal guardian to help you manage your finances and property. The words hit me like physical blows. A legal guardian. As if I were a child incapable of taking care of herself. Based on what? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Your son mentions episodes of confusion, irresponsible spending, and a renovation plan that he considers dangerous to your financial stability. I remained silent, processing the information. Daniel hadn't just ignored my pain, he had escalated his plan. It was no longer a whispered conversation at Christmas, it was now a legal strategy to strip me of my autonomy. What do you need from me? I asked. First, we need you to sign this document agreeing to undergo a psychological and financial evaluation. And if I refuse? Your son can petition for a court order. It would be more complicated for everyone, but it's feasible. After the lawyer left with my promise to think about it, I sat in the kitchen and cried like I hadn't cried since Robert's death. But these were different tears. They weren't tears of sadness, but of a deep rage that had been growing in my chest without my realizing it. That afternoon, the phone rang. It was my grandson, Sean. Grandma, can I come over? I need to talk to you. Sean arrived an hour later. At 15, he was the only member of my family who still visited without asking for anything. He sat with me on the porch, and for a while, we just sat in silence, watching the sun dip behind the neighboring houses. Grandma, I heard my mom on the phone with Uncle Daniel, he finally said. They're planning something bad against you. What did you hear, sweetie? That they're going to take the house. They say you can't take care of yourself anymore. But that's not true, right? You're fine, Grandma. I hugged him, feeling my heart break all over again. This boy, who was just beginning to understand the adult world, could see what his parents refused to acknowledge, that I wasn't a burden, but a woman who deserved respect. Do you know what the saddest part of all this is, Sean? I told him. I spent my life teaching your mom and your uncle that family takes care of each other. But it seems they only learned the part about receiving care, not giving it. Sean grew thoughtful. My teacher says that sometimes people hurt the ones they love the most because they know they'll always be forgiven. His words pierced me like a lightning bolt. Was that what I had done my whole life? Forgiven every act of disrespect, every abuse, every humiliation because I thought that was what love was? That night, after Sean left, I made a decision that would change my life forever. I went into Robert's room, the one I had kept untouched for 10 years like a shrine to our love, and from his closet, I pulled down a shoebox he kept on the highest shelf. Inside were the letters he had written to me when we were dating, some photos from our honeymoon in Key West, and something I had completely forgotten about, a life insurance policy he had taken out for me shortly before he died. My hands trembled as I read the numbers. $250,000. Money that had been sitting there for a decade without my knowledge, because Robert had always handled those matters, and after his death, I had been so consumed by grief that I never thoroughly went through all his papers. $250,000 that completely changed my perspective. I was no longer the poor widow dependent on her children's charity. I was a woman with resources, with options, with the power to make decisions about her own life. The next day, I called the insurance company and confirmed the policy was still valid. Then I called a different bank than the one I normally used and opened a new account, one that only I would know about. Finally, I searched online for lawyers specializing in family law and elder rights and found one whose reviews spoke of her experience defending seniors from financial abuse by their families. Ms. Martinez saw me in her downtown Savannah office that same afternoon. She was a woman in her 50s, elegant but approachable, who listened to me for 2 hours without interrupting or judging. Mrs. Thompson, what you're telling me is more common than you can imagine, she said when I finished my story. And I want you to know that you have rights. No one can declare you incompetent without conclusive medical evidence, and certainly not for wanting to use your own money on your own house. What can I do? First, we're going to gather all the documentation that proves you are of sound mind. Second, we're going to document all the loans and gifts you've given your children over the years. And third, we're going to prepare a legal strategy to protect your assets. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. There's something else you need to consider, the lawyer continued. It's possible that when you take control of your situation, your relationship with your children will deteriorate even further. Are you prepared for that possibility? The question hurt because I already knew the answer. If my children were capable of conspiring against me for money, if they could try to take away my autonomy without even trying to talk to me first, then the relationship I thought I had with them was already broken. I had just been living in illusion. Ms. Martinez, I told her, for 68 years, I have lived for others. I have been an obedient daughter, a devoted wife, a self-sacrificing mother, a doting grandmother. I think it's time for me to be Carol. Just Carol. That night, for the first time since Christmas, I slept soundly. I dreamed of Robert, and in my dream, he told me, Carol, I didn't leave you that house for you to be a prisoner in it. I left it for you to be free. I woke up knowing exactly what I had to do. The next day, Daniel called me. Mom, have you thought about what the lawyer said? It would be easier for everyone if you cooperate. Yes, Daniel, I've thought about it. And I have an answer for you. What is it? If you want my house, you're going to have to fight for it. But I'm warning you, it won't be the easy fight you were expecting. I hung up the phone, feeling a strength I hadn't experienced in years. The war had begun, but for the first time in my life, I was ready to fight. The reaction was immediate. The day after my defiant call to Daniel, my house became an emotional battlefield. Patty arrived first, early in the morning, her eyes swollen from crying and wearing that victim expression she knew so well how to use when she needed to manipulate me. Mom, please, don't do this, she begged from the doorway, not even waiting to be invited in. Daniel told me what you said. Why are you being so cruel to us? Cruel, Patty? I repeated the word as if I were hearing it for the first time. I'm the cruel one for not wanting to be declared insane? Nobody wants to declare you insane, Mom. We just want to protect you. Protect me from what? From myself? From my own decisions? Patty collapsed onto the living room sofa, crying with the dramatic sobs she used to use as a child to get her way. You just don't understand, Mom. If you spend all your money on that crazy renovation and it goes wrong, what's going to happen to us? Sean and Valerie need security. I need to know they'll have something when you're gone. There it was. The raw, naked truth. It wasn't about protecting me, it was about protecting their inheritance. Their financial future was more important than my present, my autonomy, my dignity. Tell me something, Patty, I said, sitting across from her. In all these years that I've helped you with money, did you ever wonder how I managed? Did you ever worry if I had enough for my own medicine after giving you what you asked for? Patty looked up, surprised by the question. Well, I assumed you were fine. You never said anything. I never said anything because a good mother doesn't complain when she helps her children. But you know what? I've eaten beans for weeks on end so I could give you money for tuition. I've worn the same dress for 5 years because every extra dollar went to you. I've postponed doctor's appointments because I couldn't afford them after helping you. Patty's tears intensified, but now there was something different about them. It wasn't manipulation, it was genuine guilt. Mom, I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. It's easier to see your mother as an infinite resource than as a person with her own needs. Just then, Daniel and Monica arrived. They walked in as if they owned the place, with that air of superiority that had always made me feel small. What did you do to Patty, Mom? Daniel asked, seeing his sister crying. Look at her. I told her the truth. Something I should have done a long time ago. Monica approached with that fake smile I knew so well. Carol, honey, I think you're confused. We only want what's best for you. Imagine if something happened to you, if you got sick, if you needed special care. It's better if everything is in order now. In order for whom, Monica? For you, of course. Don't lie, I said with a calmness that surprised even me. You have never done anything for me that didn't directly benefit you. You don't even pretend to like me when you don't need something. Monica's mask cracked for a moment. I saw a flash of the truly calculating woman she was, the one who had been sizing up the value of my house since the day she met Daniel. I won't let you speak to me like that, she said, drawing herself up. I have been a good daughter-in-law. A good daughter-in-law? I laughed without humor. Monica, in 10 years of marriage to my son, you've never once asked me how I am. You've never visited me when I've been sick. You've never included me in anything unless you needed me to pay for something. When was the last time you called me just to say hello? Daniel intervened, visibly annoyed. That's enough, Mom. I don't know what's gotten into you, but you're attacking my wife for no reason. For no reason? Daniel, your wife just admitted she wants me to get my affairs in order because it benefits her. How is that no reason? Because you're not mentally well. It's obvious. Those words hit me like a slap. My own son, the boy I had held in my arms when he had nightmares, the young man I had comforted when his first girlfriend left him, the man I had bailed out of debt more times than I could count, was declaring me insane because I wouldn't submit to his plans. I'm not mentally well? I asked, standing up from the sofa. The fact that I don't want to just give you my house means I'm crazy? No one is talking about gifts, Mom, Patty said, trying to mediate. We just want you to have help managing things. The same help you've given my wallet all these years? Because that help has cost me $340,000. Daniel turned pale. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the records I've kept, Daniel. Every dollar I've given you, every loan you never paid back, every little help that became a permanent gift. It's all documented. I pulled a folder from my purse that I had prepared with Ms. Martinez's help. Inside were all the receipts, all the bank transfers, all the bills I had paid for them over the years. This is what you call not being mentally well, I continued. A woman who has a perfect grasp of her finances, who knows exactly how much she's given and to whom. Monica grabbed the folder and began flipping through it, her face changing color as she read. This can't be true, she muttered. Every dollar is documented. Every date is verified. Every transaction is backed by bank statements. Daniel looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. It was a mixture of shock, shame, and something that hurt to recognize, resentment. As if I were the villain for keeping track of my own generosity. Why did you keep all this? Patty asked, her voice trembling. Because I was an accountant by trade, honey. I've kept records my whole life. The difference is that before, I did it silently, assuming you would eventually acknowledge everything I had done for your families. At that moment, my grandson Sean appeared at the living room door. He had arrived with Patty but had stayed in the garden, probably listening to everything from outside. Grandma, he said with a firm voice, though I could see he was nervous, can I say something? Of course, sweetie. Mom, Uncle Daniel, you're being unfair to Grandma. Patty straightened up, annoyed. Sean, this is not your business. You're too young to understand. I'm not too young to see how you treat my grandmother. And I'm not too young to remember all the times she helped us when you didn't have money. Daniel tried to interrupt, but Sean continued, Grandma, I don't want you to sell the house or do things you don't want to do just because they're pressuring you. This is your house. You decide what to do with it. Sean's intervention changed something in the atmosphere. Suddenly, my children saw themselves through the eyes of a teenager and realized how bad they looked. Patty started crying again, but this time they were tears of real shame. Sean is right, she whispered. We've been selfish. But Daniel wasn't ready to give up so easily. This is ridiculous. Sean is a kid, he doesn't understand the financial implications of the decisions you're making, Mom. And you do, Daniel? I asked him. Do you understand the financial implications of receiving almost $500,000 from your mother without ever paying a cent back? Daniel fell silent. For the first time in years, he had no answer. Monica, however, decided to show her true colors. Fine, since we're being honest, I'll be honest too, she said with a coldness that froze my blood. I have never liked you, Carol. You've always been controlling and manipulative. The problem is now that you can't control us with your money, you're throwing a tantrum. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Daniel looked uncomfortable with what his wife had just said. Monica, Patty murmured. No, I'm done with the hypocrisy, Monica continued. She uses her money to keep us tied to her. Every dollar she gives us comes with guilt and emotional blackmail. That's why it's better if someone else handles her finances. I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to defend his mother from his wife's attacks. But he just looked down, confirming that he agreed with every cruel word I had just heard. In that moment, something inside me died forever. It wasn't my heart, that had been broken for some time. It was hope. The hope that one day my children would love me unconditionally, that they would recognize my sacrifices, that they would value everything I had done for them. Monica, I said with a calm that surprised me, thank you for being honest. Now I'm going to be honest with you, you're right about one thing. I have used my money to keep you close. But not anymore. I walked to the front door and opened it wide. I invite you to leave my house. And don't come back until you can do so with respect. After they left, I closed the door and leaned against it, trembling. Not with fear, but with a strange mixture of relief and terror. For the first time in 68 years, I had set boundaries. For the first time in my life, I had chosen my dignity over the conditional love of my family. The house felt different. The silence was no longer oppressive like it had been in recent days, it was liberating. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of cold water. My hands were no longer shaking. I sat at the table where I had eaten breakfast alone for 10 years, and for the first time, that alone didn't hurt. The phone rang. It was Sean. Grandma, are you okay? Mom is crying in the car and won't stop saying you yelled at her really bad. I'm fine, sweetie. Better than fine, actually. Are you really not going to let us in the house ever again? The question broke my heart because it came from the one person in my family who truly cared about me. Sean, you will always be welcome in this house. You're my grandson, and I love you. But I have to learn to distinguish between those who truly love me and those who just need me for something. I understand, Grandma. And I'm proud of you. My civics teacher says that seniors deserve respect, not pity. After I hung up, I realized I was hungry. Truly hungry, not that empty feeling I had been experiencing for weeks. I went to the refrigerator, and for the first time in a long time, I decided to cook something special just for myself. I made huevos rancheros just the way I liked them, with spicy green salsa and refried beans. I set the table with the embroidered tablecloth I saved for special guests, poured orange juice into the crystal glass that had been my grandmother's, and sat down to eat like a queen. Every bite tasted different. It tasted like freedom. That afternoon, I made a decision I had been putting off for months. I called the contractor who had given me the estimate for the renovation. Good morning, this is Carol Thompson. Do you remember you gave me a quote for remodeling the back rooms? Of course, Mrs. Thompson. Have you made a decision? Yes. I want to start next week. Perfect. Do you have the financing ready? I have cash. The next day, I went to the bank to cash the insurance policy check. When the teller handed me the check for $250,000, I felt like I was receiving more than money. It was the independence Robert had left me without me knowing, the ability to make my own decisions without having to ask anyone's permission. Afterward, I went to a department store and bought new clothes. I hadn't bought anything for myself in over 2 years, always putting my needs aside for others. I chose 3 elegant dresses, 2 pairs of comfortable but pretty shoes, and a tracksuit for my morning walks in the park. In the cosmetics department, a very kind young woman helped me choose a hair color. Ma'am, you have such a beautiful face. This light brown color will make you look 10 years younger. As I sat in the salon chair, I looked at my reflection in the mirror and realized I had been living like a woman much older than I really was. 68 was not 80. I had the right to feel attractive, to take care of my appearance, to spend on myself without guilt. That evening, as I ate dinner alone in my house, feeling renewed with my new hair and new dress, the phone rang. It was Daniel. Mom, we need to talk. What happened yesterday got out of control. I agree. It got out of control many years ago, when you started seeing me as your personal bank instead of your mother. Don't be so dramatic. Look, Monica apologizes for what she said. She was on edge. Daniel, your wife told me exactly what she thinks of me. For the first time in 10 years, she was honest with me. I'm not going to pretend I didn't hear every word. Okay, she was rude. But the point is, we need to solve this as a family. Solve what, exactly? The issue with the house, your finances, that crazy renovation you want to do. There's nothing to solve, Daniel. I've already hired the contractor. They start on Monday. I heard him take a deep breath, trying to control his temper. Mom, if you do that, you'll run out of money. What are you going to do when the little you have is gone? I'm going to live off the rent from the apartments I'm building. It's called an investment. But it's risky. Everything in life is risky, son. Giving you and your sister hundreds of thousands of dollars was also risky, and it turned out to be a terrible investment because I never got a return. You can't compare us to an investment. Why not? You've treated me exactly like that, an investment that is expected to pay out whenever you need it to. Daniel was quiet for a few seconds. You know what, Mom? Do whatever you want. But when you end up on the street because your ridiculous plans fail, don't come crying to us for help. Daniel, in the 42 years I've known you, this is the first time you've said something I completely agree with. I hung up the phone feeling a strange peace. For the first time since Robert's death, I was making decisions based on what I wanted, not what others expected of me. The following days were revealing. Patty called me 3 times asking for money for different things: medicine for Valerie, gas for the week, a contribution for work. Each time, I said no. But Mom, Valerie will be without her medicine. Patty, you say that every month, and every month you get the medicine. You obviously have other resources. Use them. Why are you being so cruel to me? I'm not being cruel. I'm being realistic. For years, you've lived beyond your means because you knew I would cover the difference. It's time you learn to live on what you actually earn. The construction began on Monday as planned. The workers arrived early and started on the back rooms that would become 2 small but functional apartments. The sound of hammers and machinery filled me with a strange joy. It was the sound of change, of my own decisions, of a woman taking control of her destiny. Mrs. Rosa, my next-door neighbor for life, came over one morning while I was supervising the work. Carol, I'm so happy to see you in such high spirits. It's been a long time since I've seen you smile like that. Was it that obvious that I wasn't smiling? Oh, honey, it was obvious you were carrying the world on your shoulders. I always saw you worried, always rushing to solve other people's problems. Have things settled down with your kids? They've settled down with me, which is what really mattered. One afternoon, as I was having coffee in the garden watching the construction progress, Sean arrived on his bike. Grandma, I came to see how the apartments are coming along. Come on, I'll show you. This one will have a full kitchen and will be perfect for a young couple. We toured the construction site together. Sean asked intelligent questions about the blueprints, the costs, the timeline. It was the first time in months that someone in my family had shown genuine interest in something that mattered to me. Grandma, are you really not going to talk to my mom and my uncle anymore? It's not about not talking to them, Sean. It's about not allowing them to disrespect me. When they're ready to treat me like what I am, their mother, not their employee, we can talk. My mom cries a lot. She says you hate her. I don't hate her, sweetie. I love her deeply. But I will no longer allow her to confuse love with abuse. That night, after Sean left, I realized something important. I didn't miss the constant visits from my children asking for money. I didn't miss the emergency calls to solve their problems. I didn't miss being the automatic solution to every financial crisis they had. For the first time in decades, my days were my own. I could wake up without wondering what problem I'd have to solve, what bill I'd have to pay, what family drama would be waiting for me. I poured myself a glass of red wine, the one I'd been saving for a special occasion, and made a toast alone in my garden, to Carol Helen Thompson. To the woman who finally learned that love is not synonymous with sacrifice. The stars seemed to shine brighter than usual that night, or maybe I was just seeing them with new eyes. 3 weeks later, when the apartments were already taking shape and I had begun to feel my life was on a new course, the blow I didn't see coming landed. It was a Friday afternoon, and I was in the garden watering my plants when I saw Daniel's car pull up. But this time, he wasn't alone. Patty got out of the passenger seat, and from the back, an older woman I didn't immediately recognize emerged. My heart sped up when I realized who she was: Eleanor Thompson, my late husband Robert's older sister, whom I hadn't seen in over 5 years. Aunt Eleanor was a 74-year-old woman, a widow like me, but with a generous pension and inherited properties that made her financially independent. She was also known in the family for her domineering personality and her tendency to meddle in other people's affairs. Carol, she greeted me with the coldness that had always defined our relationship. We need to talk. I knew immediately that my children had played their dirtiest card. They had involved the extended family to pressure me. Eleanor had always disapproved of Robert marrying me, considering me lower class, because my family didn't have the properties and social prestige she valued. I invited them in, but this time I didn't offer coffee or cookies. I sat in my favorite armchair, the one I had bought with my first paycheck as a nurse, and let them settle on the remaining furniture. Eleanor wasted no time getting to the point. Carol, your children are very worried about you. They've told me some very disturbing things about your recent behavior. What things, exactly? That you're spending money irresponsibly, that you've thrown your family out of your house, that you're making decisions without consulting anyone. That's not normal at your age. The phrase, at your age, wounded me deeply, especially coming from a woman who was only 6 years older than me. Eleanor, I'm 68, not 98. I am of sound mind and body. I don't need to consult anyone about my financial decisions. Daniel intervened with that condescending tone he had perfected. Mom, Aunt Eleanor is helping us because she cares about you. She understands what it's like to be alone and vulnerable. Vulnerable? I repeated the word as if it had a bad taste. Who says I'm vulnerable? Eleanor pulled a folder from her purse and placed it on the coffee table. Carol, I handled my brother's affairs during his final years. I know exactly how much money he left you. And by my calculations, it should have run out long ago, considering the lifestyle you've maintained. I felt the blood rush to my head. My children had not only violated my privacy by telling Eleanor about my finances, but they had twisted the facts to make me look irresponsible. How much money do you think Robert left me? I asked her directly. According to my records, around $60,000 between insurance and savings. And who gave you that information? Eleanor gave Daniel a meaningful look. Your children are concerned because you clearly have more money than you should at this point. That suggests you're doing something irregular. The accusation left me breathless. Not only were they questioning my mental capacity, but now they were insinuating that I had obtained money illicitly. Eleanor, I said, trying to remain calm, I think there's been a serious misunderstanding. My finances are completely legal and transparent. Then you'll have no problem showing your bank statements to the family, Patty interjected. So we can all have peace of mind. The request outraged me so much that I shot up from my chair. Show you my bank statements? To you? Since when are my personal finances a family matter? Since you started acting strangely, Eleanor replied with authority. Carol, I've seen cases of mental decline in people our age. The first symptoms are paranoia toward the family and irrational financial decisions. Paranoia toward the family? I laughed humorlessly. Eleanor, my family conspired to have me declared mentally incompetent. I heard with my own ears how they planned to strip me of my autonomy. Does that sound like paranoia to you? Daniel shook his head. Mom, we never said that. You're exaggerating a normal conversation about your well-being. A normal conversation? I took out my cell phone and went to my recordings. Would you like to hear this normal conversation? The color drained from Daniel's face when he realized what I held in my hand. Mom, you recorded us? Yes, Daniel. I recorded you. And I have every word of your plan to have me declared incompetent. I put the audio on speaker. The voices of Daniel, Patty, and Monica filled the room, crystal clear and devastating. I've already spoken to a lawyer. We can argue that she's no longer fit to manage her own finances. Are you talking about declaring her incompetent? It's for her own good. Imagine if she gets into debt and loses everything. The silence that followed was absolute. Eleanor looked at my children with an expression I couldn't read. Patty had her hands over her face, ashamed. Daniel seemed to be searching for words he couldn't find. These are my children, Eleanor, I said in a firm voice. The children you say are so worried about me. Does that sound like a conversation of concern or greed? Eleanor took several seconds to respond. Carol, I didn't know. You didn't know because they lied to you. They told you a distorted version of the facts to manipulate you and use you as a reinforcement in their plan to control my finances. I walked over to the shelf where I kept my most important documents and took out the folder I had prepared with Ms. Martinez. You want to see my finances? Fine. Here they are. I placed the bank statements, the proof of the insurance policy, and all the receipts from the transfers I had made to my children over the years on the table. This is the life insurance policy that Robert took out for me, which you didn't know existed. $250,000, completely legal. These are the bank statements showing every dollar I have given them over 17 years. And this is the documentation for the investment I am making in MY House with MY Money. Eleanor reviewed the documents with the meticulousness of someone used to handling finances. Her expression gradually changed from suspicion to surprise, and finally to something that looked like respect. Carol, these documents are in perfect order. Your finances are impeccable. Of course they're in order. I was an accountant for 30 years before I married your brother. I know how to manage money better than anyone else in this room. Eleanor turned to Daniel with a coldness that surprised me. Daniel, you've made me look like a fool. You told me your mother was squandering a non-existent inheritance and acting irrationally. What I see here is a woman who manages her finances impeccably and has been extraordinarily generous to a family that doesn't seem to appreciate it. Patty started crying again. Aunt Eleanor, we didn't mean to lie to you. You didn't mean to lie? Eleanor stood up, clearly annoyed. You brought me here under false pretenses. You made me believe Carol needed a family intervention when what she needs is protection from you. Daniel tried to defend himself. Auntie, you don't understand the full situation. I understand the situation perfectly, Daniel. I understand that your mother has given you nearly $500,000 over the years and you want more. I understand that you're so used to seeing her as your personal bank that you can't accept her making independent decisions. Eleanor turned to me with an expression I had never seen from her, genuine respect. Carol, I owe you an apology. Not just for doubting you, but for letting these ungrateful children use me against you. You don't need to apologize, Eleanor. You acted on the information they gave you. But I should have known you better after all these years. Robert always said you were the smartest, strongest woman he had ever known. Today, I understand why. Eleanor headed for the door, but before leaving, she turned back to Daniel and Patty. And you two should be ashamed of yourselves. Your mother is an exceptional woman who deserves respect, not manipulation. If you ever involve me in your petty schemes again, not only will I not help you, but I will make sure the entire family knows exactly what kind of children you are. After Eleanor left, my children sat there like scolded children. The plan they had orchestrated had not only failed but had backfired in the most humiliating way possible. Mom, Patty whispered, I am so sorry. I'm sorry too, Patty. I'm sorry you went this far. I'm sorry you were willing to involve third parties with lies to get what you wanted. Daniel finally spoke. What do you want us to do now? I looked him straight in the eye, this son who had been my pride and my worry for 42 years, and gave him the most honest answer I could. I want you to leave my house and not come back until you can do so as the responsible adults you should be, not the manipulative children you have become. This time, when I closed the door behind them, I knew it wasn't temporary. It was final. 2 months after that final confrontation, my life had changed in ways I never imagined possible. The apartments were finished, and they looked beautiful. Tiled floors, small but functional modern kitchens, new bathrooms with walk-in showers. The contractor had done an excellent job, and I had learned more about plumbing, electricity, and finishing work than I ever thought possible at 68. As soon as I placed the ad in the local paper, inquiries started pouring in. I rented the first apartment to a young couple, Edward and Clara, both teachers, whom I liked so much that I lowered the price a bit when I found out they were saving for their wedding. The second was taken by Sarah, a divorced nurse with a teenage daughter, who reminded me of myself in my struggling days as a single mother after I was widowed. For the first time in a decade, I had income that didn't depend on my Social Security. On the first of every month, I received an extra $2,500 that I could use for whatever I pleased, without having to calculate if it would be enough for the family emergencies that always seemed to crop up. With this new financial independence, I started doing things I had put off for years. I enrolled in a watercolor painting class at the local community arts center. I had always dreamed of learning to paint, but I never had the time or money for luxuries like that. The instructor, a woman named Hope in her 50s, became something I hadn't had in a long time, a genuine friend. During our Wednesday afternoon classes, we talked about art, about life, about our deferred dreams. Hope was a widow too, but she had managed to turn her passion for painting into a small business that gave her independence and purpose. Carol, you have an artist's hands, she told me one day as she observed my attempt to paint the bougainvillea in my garden. Why did you wait so long to start? Because there were always other priorities, I replied. Children to care for, a house to maintain, problems to solve. There was never time for Carol. And now? Now I've discovered that Carol is a priority, too. One April afternoon, as I was walking home from my painting class through downtown Savannah, I came across something that changed my perspective completely. In Forsyth Park, there was a small but emotional demonstration, a group of older women protesting against family neglect and financial abuse of seniors. A woman in her 70s was speaking into a microphone with a passion that moved me. We are not our family's ATMs. We have the right to live with dignity, to make our own decisions, to be respected for who we are, not for what we can give. I approached and started talking to the protesters. I discovered there was a whole network of older women who had lived through situations similar to mine: financial abuse by adult children, emotional manipulation, attempts to control their decisions under the pretext of protecting them. Margaret, the woman with the microphone, invited me to their weekly meetings. They gathered every Friday in a room at St. John's Parish Hall, where they shared experiences, gave each other mutual support, and organized activities for women in vulnerable situations. Dear, Margaret said to me after hearing my story, what you went through is not unique. Many of us have been the family bank, the ones who solve everything, the ones who can never say no. But it's never too late to change that dynamic. I began to attend those meetings religiously. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by women who understood exactly what I had been through, who didn't judge me for setting boundaries, who applauded my decision to invest in myself. In one of those meetings, I met Joy, a 75-year-old woman who had started a small baking business after her children tried to put her in a nursing home to get their hands on her house. You know what hurt the most? She told me as we had coffee after the meeting. It wasn't that they wanted my money. It was that they thought I was useless, that I had nothing left to contribute to the world. Her words hit me hard because I recognized that feeling. For years, I had defined myself solely by my function as a provider, as a solver of other people's problems. When that function was questioned, I felt my value as a person vanish. But now, painting watercolors on Wednesdays, collecting rent from my apartments each month, talking with women who had rebuilt their lives after 60, I realized I had so much more to offer than money. One morning in May, as I was having breakfast in the garden enjoying the murmur of my tenants getting ready for work, the phone rang. It was Sean. Grandma, can I come over today? I have something important to tell you. Of course, sweetie. You're always welcome. Sean arrived that afternoon with an expression more mature than I remembered. At 15, he was growing up fast, and the family experiences of the last few months had clearly made him think a lot. Grandma, I want you to know something, he said as we sat on the porch. Mom and Uncle Daniel still talk about you, but it's different now. Different how? Now they talk about how much they miss you. That they realized you were always there for us and they didn't appreciate it. And what do you think about that, Sean? I think it's okay that they miss you, but it's not okay that they're only saying it now that they can't ask you for money anymore. If they really valued you, they would have valued you when you were giving them everything. My grandson's wisdom impressed me. At 15, he understood something his parents were struggling to grasp. You know what I like most about visiting you now, he continued. I see you happy. Before, you always seemed worried, always thinking about how to help someone else. Now I see you, free. Free? Yeah. Like you can finally be yourself without having to take care of everyone. That conversation with Sean made me reflect on something important. For months, I had been so focused on my children's betrayal, on the pain of their rejection, that I hadn't noticed something fundamental. I was flourishing. For the first time in decades, I woke up each morning without a mental list of other people's problems to solve. I ate breakfast in peace, watered my plants, chatted with my tenants when we crossed paths in the garden. Wednesdays were for my painting class, Fridays for my meetings with the women from the support group, and weekends I could do whatever I wanted without consulting anyone. I had started reading novels again, something I hadn't done since before I got married. I had subscribed to Netflix and was watching Korean dramas that made me laugh and cry without having to explain to anyone why I liked them. I bought fresh flowers for the house every week, a small luxury that filled me with joy. One afternoon, while I was painting in the garden, an unexpected visitor arrived. It was Eleanor, the sister-in-law who had come to confront me months ago. Carol, I hope I'm not bothering you. Can we talk? Of course, Eleanor. Would you like some coffee? As I served her coffee and showed her the finished apartments, I could see Eleanor watching me with a new kind of attention. Carol, I came to tell you something I should have said many years ago, she began as we sat in the living room. I always thought Robert had chosen poorly when he married you. I thought you were too simple for him, too ordinary. Her words stung a little, but they no longer had the devastating power they would have had months before. But these past few months, I've been watching what you've accomplished, she continued. You've turned your house into a smart investment, you've set boundaries with children who were taking advantage of you, you've taken control of your life at an age when many women give up. You've made me question my own prejudices. Eleanor, you don't need to apologize for the past. Yes, I do. And I also need to ask you a favor. My granddaughter, my eldest son's daughter, is going through a difficult time. Her husband left her, and she doesn't know how to rebuild her life. Would you be willing to talk to her? I think she needs to hear the story of a woman who managed to pull through after everything seemed lost. The request surprised me. Eleanor, who for decades had seen me as her inferior, was now asking me to mentor her granddaughter. Of course, I can talk with her. But Eleanor, I want you to understand something. I didn't pull through in spite of the difficult circumstances. I pulled through because I finally decided I deserved to. Eleanor smiled for the first time since I'd known her. That's exactly what she needs to hear. That night, after Eleanor left, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and really saw myself for the first time in a long time. My light brown hair shone with health, my skin looked better now that I wasn't losing sleep worrying about other people's problems, and my eyes had a light I hadn't seen in years. Hello, Carol, I said to my reflection. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. For the first time in 68 years, I completely liked the woman in the mirror. A year had passed since that Christmas that changed my life forever. It was December 2024, and I was once again preparing Christmas dinner, but this time everything was different. The table was set for 8, but none of them were Daniel or Patty. Hope, my painting teacher, had accepted my invitation to come with her son, who was in medical school. Margaret from the support group was coming with her 2 adoring granddaughters. Sarah, my tenant, would celebrate with us along with her daughter. And of course, Sean had asked for permission to spend Christmas Eve with me. As I put the final touches on the table, I realized I had created something I never had before, a chosen family, people who were there because they wanted to be, not because they felt obligated or needed something from me. The doorbell rang, and Sean arrived with a smile that filled my heart. At 16, he had become a thoughtful and caring young man who visited his grandmother because he genuinely enjoyed her company. "Grandma, I brought you something," he said, handing me a small canvas. It was a watercolor of our house, painted with surprising skill for someone his age. You could see the historic facade, the garden full of flowers, and in one corner, barely visible, an older woman watering the plants with a smile on her face. "Sean, this is beautiful. When did you learn to paint like this?" "I've been taking classes at school. I wanted to paint you how I see you now, in your place, in your home, being happy." His words touched me deeply. For decades, my family had seen me as the problem solver, the giver, the sacrificer. Now my grandson simply saw me as a happy woman in her own space. As my guests arrived, the house filled with cheerful conversations, genuine laughter, and that sense of community I had been searching for my whole life without knowing it. There was no tension over money, no requests disguised as family visits, no guilt or manipulation. Just people who cared for each other and enjoyed being together. During dinner, Hope raised her glass. "I'd like to make a toast to Carol, the woman who has taught us all that it's never too late to choose happiness over obligation." To Carol, everyone said in unison, and I felt my heart expand in a way I had never experienced before. After dinner, as we were washing dishes and clearing the table, my phone rang. It was Patty. "Mom, Merry Christmas. I know things have been complicated between us, but I wanted you to know that I miss you very much." "Merry Christmas, Patty. Thank you for calling." "Mom, could we see each other soon? I have a lot to tell you. Things I should have told you a long time ago." For the first time in a year, Patty's voice sounded genuine, without that manipulative edge I had learned to recognize. "We can see each other whenever you like, honey. But I want you to know the terms have changed." "What terms?" "That you come as my daughter, not as my creditor. That you respect my decisions even if you don't understand them. That you accept I am an adult woman capable of managing her own life." Patty was quiet for a few seconds. "Okay, Mom. I accept those terms. In fact, I think I need to learn from you how to be an independent woman." 3 days later, Patty came to visit. When I opened the door, I was surprised to see her looking different. She had cut her hair, wore less makeup, and there was something about her posture that seemed more confident, more authentic. "Mom, the house looks beautiful. The apartments turned out great." I let her in and served her coffee in the kitchen. For the first time in years, I didn't feel that automatic tension, wondering what she was going to ask for. "Patty, you look different." "I feel different, Mom. These months without being able to run to you every time I had a problem forced me to learn how to solve them myself. And you know what I discovered? I'm much more capable than I thought." She told me how she had started working extra hours to cover the expenses she used to ask me to cover. How she had learned to budget realistically. How she had difficult but necessary conversations with Sean and Valerie about family responsibilities. "But most importantly," she continued, "I realized I had been seeing you as an extension of myself, not as a separate person with her own dreams and needs. That was very wrong of me. Patty, hearing you say that means a lot to me. Mom, I want to apologize. Not just for the money, but for not really seeing you. For reducing you to what you could do for me instead of valuing you for who you are." Her tears seemed genuine, different from the manipulative tears I had seen so many times before. "And I want you to know something else," she added. "I've been seeing a therapist. She helped me understand that I turned my mother into my emotional and financial safety net, and that wasn't fair to either of us." For the first time in a year, I hugged my daughter. But this hug was different. It wasn't the hug of a desperate mother trying to hold her family together at any cost. It was the hug of a woman who had found her own worth and could share affection without sacrificing her dignity. "And Daniel?" I asked. Patty sighed. "Daniel is having a harder time accepting the changes. Monica has convinced him that you're being cruel and vindictive. I think it's going to take more time for him to understand what we did wrong." "That's okay. Everyone has their own process." "Mom, could you teach me how to paint? Sean told me you take classes, and I'd like to have something in common with you that isn't money or problems." That request moved me more than any material gift I had ever received. Of course, honey. In fact, you can come to my class with me if you like. The following months were a slow but solid reconstruction. Patty began visiting regularly, not when she needed something, but when she wanted to talk, when she wanted to learn something new, when she simply missed her mother. Sean remained my constant companion, but now Patty sometimes joined our conversations. Daniel took longer. He finally came to see me in March, after Eleanor told him some very harsh truths about his behavior. His apology was clumsier, more defensive, but he eventually acknowledged he had been wrong too. Mom, I don't know how to fix what I did. You don't need to fix anything, Daniel. You just need to decide if you want a relationship with me based on mutual respect, or if you'd prefer to have no relationship at all. He chose respect, though it took him several months to truly learn what that meant. Monica never apologized, but she also stopped being a problem. Daniel eventually set boundaries with her about how she spoke of his family, and while our relationship never became close, it at least became civil. Today, 3 years after that life-changing Christmas, I'm sitting in my garden painting the bougainvillea I planted last year. My tenants have become like family. Edward and Clara got married and invited me to the wedding. Sarah got a promotion at the hospital and can now afford a higher rent, which I don't charge because I'd rather have her as a neighbor. My Friday Women's group has expanded. There are 15 of us now, and we've helped dozens of women rebuild their lives after situations of family abuse. I have purpose, community, and something I never thought I'd have, real independence. Patty comes for lunch with me every Sunday. Sean majored in art and now gives me advanced lessons. Daniel visits once a month, and while our relationship will never be what it was, we've found a new, functioning balance. But the most important thing is this: I have learned that true love does not require constant sacrifice. True love respects, values, and celebrates. For 68 years, I confused love with servitude, family with obligation. Now I know that a mother who respects herself teaches her children to respect others. A woman who knows her worth does not allow others to undervalue her. And a person who chooses her own happiness is not selfish, she is an example of what it means to live with dignity. My story is not unique. There are thousands of older women who have lived similar experiences, who have mistaken love for sacrifice, who have allowed their families to see them as resources instead of people. Let me ask you something: have you lived through something similar? Do you know someone who has? If my story touched your heart or made you think, I ask you to comment with your experience. Sometimes, sharing our stories is what we need to heal. And if you liked this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I need this message to reach someone who needs to hear it, someone who needs to know that it's never too late to choose self-respect, someone who needs to understand that true love doesn't hurt. Because at the end of the day, the most valuable lesson I learned is this: it's not about how much you can give, but about how much you value yourself. And that lesson is priceless.